Here's one you haven't seen before. Her name is Sophie, by the way. Well, I was friends with two of the artists involved in the movie you're going to see this week. Both of them first-rate artists. Composer lyricist Hugh Martin and performer Nancy Walker. So I have to admit, this little intro is going to be a kind of love letter to both of them. But I know that by now you trust my judgment so completely that that you're going to trust me that I'm being objective. So I can only hope you agree with me that MGM's Best Foot Forward, released in 1943, is a funny and sweet movie that wanted nothing more than to offer you 95 minutes of entertainment during World War II. Oh yeah, you're going to hear references to rationing and to scrap rubber, and there's a really stirring shot of the American flag at the end. It's pretty faithful to the big Broadway success from 2 years earlier, so I want to start there. One of my heroes, producer, director, writer, and immortal showman George Abbott, wanted to make a musical from a script by John Cecil Home, who had written a comedy hit from that period. You may have seen the film, Three Men on a Horse. One thing that attracted George Abbott to the project, and let me tell you, he was as shrewd as can be, was that since the script was set at a prep school, most of the cast would be teenagers. Well, since war seemed inevitable in 1941, the young men would be so young the actors couldn't be drafted. And here's another brilliant stroke on Abbott's part. Up to then, he had only done his musicals with Rodgers and Hart. Now he wanted a younger, unknown team who wrote more in the style of swing-era jazz. Two 20-somethings named Hugh Martin and Ralph Blane heard about it, and they decided to audition for Abbott and Richard Rodgers. Abbott brought Rodgers into the production as a silent partner to pass judgment on the music. Now, Martin and Blane were two of the four members of the Martins, a popular jazz vocal group who had recorded and done a lot of radio, and Hugh had been creating dazzling vocal arrangements for Rodgers and Hart shows, so they at least had credentials. One problem, though, they had never written a song in their lives. But they wrote two for their audition. Blane wrote the music and lyrics for one of them. Martin wrote both words and music for the other. And guess what? Abbott and Rodgers hired Martin and Blane. And guess what else? Richard Rodgers became Hugh Martin's mentor. And that very first song written by Hugh, Every Time, is now considered a classic of the Great American Songbook. Listen for it in the movie. And one more, guess what else? In the 1990s, Hugh Martin became my dear friend. He's best known for his score for Meet Me in St. Louis and his sensational vocal arrangements for a slew of musicals, including Best Foot Forward. No need to dwell on the Broadway show, which opened just 2 months before Pearl Harbor, except to say that at Hugh's suggestion, Gene Kelly came out of the starring role in Pal Joey on Broadway, and he did his first choreography for Best Foot Forward. And that on Broadway, the supporting cast included two notables, June Allison and my future good buddy, Nancy Walker, who was then just 19. In the late 1980s, I invited Nancy to a symposium I put together honoring George Abbott. Here's what she remembered about singing 3 sad songs, if you can believe it, auditioning for Abbott and Rodgers.
You've been to an open call just out of curiosity. It's like a pound of rice trying to get through a straw. I've never seen anything like And when I got there to the Barrymore Theater, I thought, oh my God, I'll never get in. The day before, my father and I had chosen the name of Walker out of a hat, literally. I said, oh, well, Walker will do, that'll be fun. But, I mean, the odds of getting into something like this is ridiculous. And I stood there for about 5 minutes bemoaning my fate when a woman came out and said, well, isn't Miss Walker here yet? Yes! She's here. I didn't know who she was. And thank God she didn't know who I was. She said, well, we've been waiting for you, and you're an hour late, and who knows. I got on and sang 3 songs, and I give you my word, comedy had never entered my mind, ever. It was the last time it didn't. But you see, Mr. Abbott's great genius is that he saw it, but he didn't tell me. So I never came into a room ever in my life thinking I was amusing. I never went on a stage thinking I was amusing. So I was saved. He laughed. I was brokenhearted. Really brokenhearted, and I was 19, and no girl 19 wants to be funny. Well, do you? And he said, I heard a voice say, come out and sit in the auditorium, and I did. And about, I don't know, 10 minutes later, this great tall man came over and said, well, there's nothing in the show for you. I thought, oh, wonderful, why have I been sitting here? And he said, but Mr. Rogers says that he won't help me with his show if I don't write something in for you. Will you take a chance with us? So I mumbled something unintelligible. I guess it was yes. At any rate, that was in May, and the following October, I got a call to go to work. You can imagine my anguish in between those months, not hearing from anybody. But in October, indeed, we went to work.
Her character's name? Blind Date. That was Abbott's idea. Well, Nancy Walker made her Broadway debut in Best Foot Forward, playing, as George Abbott described her, a plain little girl. So now, on to Hollywood. 2 years later, 6 members of the Broadway cast journeyed to the coast, including June Allison, who became an MGM star, as you know, and Nancy Walker, who didn't. But more about that later. The setting changed from a prep school to a military academy for obvious reasons, but the storyline was pretty much the same. As a publicity stunt, a movie star accepts an invitation to a prom at Winsaki Academy. And there are, of course, complications. Although, let me tell you, this is one wafer-thin plot. Nothing to say, really, about Edward Buzzell's direction. It's merely adequate. Stanley Donen, he ain't. But you do need to know a few things about this cast, which is anything but. Lucille Ball plays herself, a movie star whose career is not exactly soaring, and neither was hers at that time. Anyway, surprisingly, Lucy is not a whole lot of fun in this movie. She's mostly annoyed. But I have to say, I think Best Foot Forward was gutsy on her part, because she's really satirizing herself. And it should be noted that this movie marked her debut as a redhead. Her press agent is played by the brash comic William Gaxton. What a treat to see him on screen, because on stage he did lots and lots of musicals. It was Gaxton, of course, who introduced You're the Top on Broadway with Ethel Merman. And we could say, I think, that Harry James is truly a co-star. The fact is, in 1943, those big band Hepcat leaders were the rock stars of their day. We saw that in Girl Crazy, too, with Tommy Dorsey. The cute young couple are played by Tommy Dix and Virginia Weidler. Weidler is jealous of Lucille Ball, and Dix is worried that he'll lose Weidler, who is his real girlfriend, by going to the dance with Lucy. And now, we come to the pint-sized Nancy Walker as blind date. For me, she steals the picture with her laconic, deadpan, take-no-prisoners persona, which, of course, she polished to a fare-thee-well on TV 30 years later. Oh, she makes a terrific entrance on screen, driving her car up onto the campus. I would say watch for it, but the fact is, you can't miss it. Nancy came to MGM direct from the stage Best Foot Forward in a 3-picture deal, but the studio never really knew what to do with her. And in 1944, she made a beeline back to Broadway, where she immediately triumphed in On the Town. To be honest, it was on the New York stage that Nancy Walker became a legendary figure. When she died, she actually got an editorial in the New York Times. I guarantee you that when you see her perform the 3 Bs with June Allison, MGM up-and-comer Gloria DeHaven, and Harry James, it will come as a revelation, because not enough people know that Nancy Walker was a fantastic swing singer and that she could even dance. There is so much going on in the 3 Bs that Hugh Martin told me he worried the recording engineers would not be able to capture it all, including his daring vocal arrangement. But thank God they did. It is musical comedy bliss. Well, there you have it. But 2 postscripts. Hugh Martin adored Nancy Walker. And in 1948, he and George Abbott and Jerome Robbins built a whole show around her. Look, Ma, I'm dancing. I love what he writes in his memoirs. I've noticed that many comedians who are required to play women perceived as less than lovely have an aura, a kind of angelic spirit hovering over them, making them seem beautiful. In other words, Martha Raye, Fanny Brice, and Nancy. Well, I am proud to say that I was helping Nancy Walker with her own memoirs when she developed cancer and had to stop writing. Final postscript. So with Best Foot Forward, Martin and Blaine became a team. But not really. You see, except for one song in the show, they wrote separately. Blaine had the hit with Buckle Down, Winsocki, Buckle Down. You may remember that in the 1960s, right after Ralph Nader, that became Buckle Up for Safety, Buckle Up. On Broadway, 7 of the songs were Hugh's, 6 were by Ralph, and as I said, they wrote just 1 song together. I'm showing my bias when I tell you that the really good ones are Hugh Martin's. And in all the shows and movies that came later, whenever the credit line read Martin and Blaine, it's actually just Hugh, who lived to be 97 and was writing almost up until his death in 2011. In 1971, Alec Wilder showered him with praise in his book American Popular Song, and as for that first song, written for Best Foot Forward, Every Time, Wilder called it very warm, very dear. This is Hugh's response.
And I remember thinking, how did he know that? And I remember thinking, somebody was listening. You know, I've been writing for 30 years, and I don't know whether anybody ever heard what was in my heart. And here's somebody who did, and isn't that wonderful?
One of the great American songwriters, Hugh Martin, and one of the nicest. I'm Bill Rudman from the Musical Theater Project.